The sun rose lazily over my 60-acre ranch on the edge of town. Casting golden hues across the glassy surface of the lake, I'd stalked myself over the past 5 years. That lake was my pride. A peaceful sanctuary, carved out with hard work. Home to bass, catfish, and the occasional curious duck. It was the result of sweat, vision, and long weekends with a shovel and a stubborn backhoe. You'd think a man could drop a line into his own water without inviting a storm. But that morning. As I cast my lure near the shallows, I had no idea my fishing rod was about to trigger a $1.2 million mistake for the local HOA. It started with a voice, sharp, shrill, and entirely unwelcome. You can't fish here. This is HOA managed land. I turned slowly, squinting against the light. On the far edge of the lake, separated from me by a wooden fence and 30 yards of brush, stood a woman in a pastel tracksuit, holding a tiny dog. Behind her were a row of beige cookie-cutter homes, the type that screamed conformity, complete with manicured lawns and trash cans hidden behind plastic latticework. I knew the development well. I owned the land before they built it. I'm fishing on my land, lady, I called back calmly, reeling in my line. This lake sits entirely within my ranch. She scoffed, shaking her head. That's not what our HOA says. We were told the lake is community access. This entire shore is part of the shared greenbelt. Now, this wasn't the first time. I'd had run-ins with the Willow Bend Lakeside HOA. They'd sent letters before, complaints about my tractor making too much noise, or my pond pump affecting community water flow. I always dismissed them with the same shrug. They were under a dangerous assumption that because their homes were built around the perimeter of my land, they somehow owned a piece of it. I shook my head and turned back to the water. 10 minutes later, 2 sheriffs. Deputies pulled up in a cruiser, tires crunching across the gravel path I'd laid myself. They walked up cautiously, hands on their belts. Morning, I said, keeping both hands visible, rod in one tackle box at my feet. Sir. Got a call about a trespasser fishing on private property, one of them said. He was young, maybe, mid-30s, and already looked tired of the nonsense. Whose property do they claim I'm on? I asked the deputy, pointed across the lake. The same woman was still there, now flanked by 2 men in polos holding HOA clipboards like badges. I laughed, couldn't help it, gentlemen, I said, reaching into my back pocket and pulling out a folded map from the county registrar. I own all 60 acres surrounding this lake. The HOA built their development on a corner parcel they bought from me 10 years ago. But this lake, this land, it was never included. Still mine. They took the map, comparing it to the GPS on their tablets. We're going to need to confirm this with dispatch, one said, nodding. You good to wait a few minutes? Take your time, I said, casting another line. What followed over the next hour was a slow unraveling of the HOA's fabricated claim. When the county land assessor confirmed via radio that the lake and its perimeter sat fully on my parcel, the officers walked across to speak to the HOA reps. I stayed put, watching the woman's face go from smug superiority to something between confusion and horror. It could have ended there. Should have. But when the deputies left and I packed up to head back toward the ranch house, a letter was taped to my gate the next morning. Cease and desist. Unauthorized use of HOA resources. HOA regulations prohibit non-members from utilizing community-shared natural features. I chuckled again, more irritated than amused this time. They doubled down, so I hired a lawyer. What the HOA hadn't realized was that by falsely claiming ownership of my land, especially in official HOA documents distributed to residents and county officials, they had crossed into dangerous legal territory. They had, for years, advertised access to Willow Bend's private lake in brochures, listings, and homeowner packets. They collected dues under the premise of maintaining a shared natural amenity, except that amenity was mine, my lawyer. A shrewd property law expert named Naomi smiled like a wolf when she read the letter. They've claimed exclusive rights to your property, she said. That's textbook misappropriation. If they built structures, docks, or even landscaped your land without a proper easement or permission. Asterisk, they built a gazebo last year, I interrupted. Right on the south edge of the lake. Asterisk, she leaned back, her smile widening. That's going to cost them. Asterisk. We filed suit, civil trespass, encroachment, and defamation of property rights. Naomi also notified the county that the HOA had been improperly taxing residents for access to land they didn't own. That triggered a separate investigation. Asterisk, for the next 6 months, the HOA tried every tactic in the book. They claimed historical usage, implied access, even floated a fake document they alleged was an easement. Agreement from years prior, which turned out to be forged. That little stunt added a layer of fraud to the already damning case. Asterisk. The final ruling was brutal. The judge ordered the HOA to pay $320,000 in damages for trespass and unauthorized use of land. Asterisk, remove all structures and landscaping from my property. Within 60 days, seize all references to the lake in official documents and marketing materials. Refund over $400,000 in HOA fees collected under false pretenses. Asterisk, cover all legal fees and court costs, totaling just under $500,000. Asterisk, total price tag is $1.24 million. Asterisk, the HOA board was replaced within 2 weeks. The president, the woman in the tracksuit, as it turned out, resigned in disgrace. Her house went up for sale the next month. Asterisk, as part of the settlement, I also received full rights to enforce access. I put up a tall cedar fence along the lake's edge bordering the HOA. Posted signs read, "Private property, no trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted." Just for fun, I added a large wooden sign carved by hand, "Fisherman's Paradise, private lake, not for HOA use." Now I fish in peace. Sometimes a neighbor from the development walks their dog along the path and stops to stare at the water, remembering the days when they thought it was theirs. I give a little wave, maybe even tip my hat. I don't hold a grudge. I make sure they see the rod in my hand and the badge on my belt, a leather patch my daughter made that says, "Lake owner." Revenge, they say, is best served cold. But I prefer mine with a splash and a freshly caught bass on the grill. Ask.